In his State of the Union, President Trump recently talked about the Trillion Tree Initiative. It sounds too easy to be true. Surely we can't use trees to combat climate change. And he didn't mention climate change, but it was pretty obvious that that was the inference. We need to think about everything in terms of reducing carbon emissions. It looks too easy. So we looked into it. We did some of the math. And it turns out that yes, of course, trees vary enormously in size, but we think the average tree weighs about 3 tons. Trees are made up of about 50% carbon because, of course, they capture carbon dioxide. They need CO2 and water to grow, and trees give off oxygen, and the carbon stays in the tree in the form of glucose. The average 3-ton tree, it turns out, can absorb about 1.5 tons of carbon. And to go through a little bit of chemistry here, carbon is about 27% of a CO2 molecule when you measure it by atomic weight. So what that means is that a 3-ton tree can absorb almost 6 tons of CO2 over its life. And it gives off oxygen. This still sounds like a lot of trees. How many trees do we need to do this? The world generated 33 gigatons of CO2 last year. A gigaton is 1 billion tons. What that means is that 6 billion new trees would absorb all of the CO2 we generated last year over their lives. The world has 3 trillion trees. So all that means is that we need to add 1/5 of 1% to the trees every year in order to offset 1 year's worth of CO2. America plants 1.5 billion trees a year. India planted 220 million trees in just 1 day. This is starting to seem really plausible. But planting trees is labor intensive. Typically, one man who's trained to plant trees can cover about 2 acres in a day. But we found 2 companies that use drones to plant trees, and it turns out that one skilled operator managing 15 drones can cover 300 acres of planting trees in 1 day. The world could do this. We need to look at everything in terms of combating climate change. We need to look at planting trees. We need to look at using more renewables. We need to look at cleaner ways of using what works. Climate extremists are focused on opposing fossil fuels, even though it's 80% of the world's energy and it works. But because their opposition is so extreme, concern is so shallow. Notwithstanding all of the focus on climate change, 45% of new cars in America are SUVs. People in the world are flying more. Electric vehicles are less than 1.5% of new car sales. And where emissions are falling, like in America, it's because we're using more natural gas and less coal. Planting trees offers a potential solution to climate change. It should be part of the fight. I'm Simon Lack. We invest in energy infrastructure.